Today, I'll be trying to summarize an absolute monster of a book, or at least trying to justify me listening to all of it on Audible. Oh, that was a mistake. A Tale of a Man Trying to Get Home, one of the most well-known Greek myths. The story is a sequel to the Trojan War and shows what happened to the winners after the good old wooden horse trick. The epic tale of a ship and its crew, and a great journey named after the only survivor. Oh, you guys didn't know about that part? Anyway, our story doesn't begin with the namesake's tale. First we must visit his homeland, the island of Ithaca, where Odysseus' wife, Penelope, is busy fending off a veritable army of bachelors, since anyone who married her would be the new king, and a lot of people wanted the post. She had turned down every suitor, and her son Telemachus kept trying to get the men to leave the palace, but every time he tried, they wouldn't go. So, one day the gods decided that, a decade is enough suffering, and Athena decided it was time for some deific intervention. She went down to Telemachus, disguised as a random guy, and said, "Yo dude, maybe your dad's alive. You should, look for him or something." Now, Telemachus, who knows a thing or two about myths, figures out it's a god, and probably telling the truth, so he forms a small loyal crew to set out and find his father. First he heads to the island of Pelos, home to King Nestor, and asked him if he knew anything about Odysseus' whereabouts. So of course, Nestor told him his entire life story, sprinkling in small details here and there, which basically boiled down to, haven't seen him in over a decade since the Trojan War. Agamemnon and Menelaus were having an argument, so a bunch of us decided to just head home. But Odysseus went back to stop Menelaus. So go ask Menelaus what happened. Maybe he'll know more. With that, Telemachus set off to Sparta to meet Menelaus, who of course wants to tell him his epic adventure, of how he tackled a random ocean god. But Telemachus really doesn't have the time for this, and was about to interrupt the king, which is never a good idea, when Menelaus said that this random god was an exposition god, who had told him fates of a bunch of other heroes from the Trojan War and Odysseus, who was stranded on Calypso's island. So, Telemachus, finally having the information he needs, sets off to actually find his father. Speaking of which, let's talk about Odysseus. He's been stuck on Calypso's island for near a decade at this point, so Hermes, the messenger god, came down and told Calypso to let Odysseus go. And he set sail in a definitely sturdy raft that definitely won't break 3 seconds into a storm. But Poseidon, who was angry at Odysseus for reasons that'll soon be explained, was not about to let Odysseus' life be any easier. So he summoned a giant storm, destroyed Odysseus' raft in seconds, but Odysseus, the lucky anime protagonist, got washed up on another island, and the princess of said island found him and brought him to the palace to tell his epic tale, and how he ended up on Calypso's island in the first place. His so-called Odyssey. Yes, only now are we actually getting to the Odyssey part of the Odyssey. How does such an epic tale begin? Well, after the sacking of Troy, the Greeks were split on whether to stay or head home, and the next morning a retaliatory Trojan force ran them out of the city. And a totally freak storm sweeps them out to sea, to a land on some island full of very mellow dudes eating nothing but lotuses. A few shenanigans later, they set off and land on a completely inconspicuous island, and see a totally safe cave to spend the night, which just happened to be the home of Polyphemus, a huge hungry Cyclops who trapped them. To escape, they got the Cyclops incredibly drunk, and Odysseus introduced himself as nobody. So when Polyphemus passed out, they proceeded to stab out his eye. Now you're probably wondering how that would help them escape since there was a boulder in front of the entrance. Well, when Polyphemus woke up, he began to shout, "Nobody stabbed my eye out," and the other Cyclopses said, "Yeah, and I bet nobody stole your sheep too." So Polyphemus goes to check, even though he has no eyes. I don't see how that would really work. And Odysseus and co. run off. For some reason, Odysseus thought it was a good idea to taunt Polyphemus after he got back on his ship, tell him his actual name, but since all Cyclopes are children of Poseidon, and now Odysseus has officially got 2 of the big 3 gods against him, which explains the whole, Poseidon stopping him from getting home later on in the story. Next they arrive on the island of Aeolia, where the king gave him a magic bag with the power of wind because he was so moved by the story and how much of a tough time Odysseus had been having. So, with that, the crew and Odysseus head home. End of story, he reaches land, has a beautiful reunion and meets his son, and his dog. You'd think that's how it ends, but that'd be too easy. When they're nearly at Ithaca, the crew decides it isn't possible for the bag to hold the power of the wind, and they open it. The subsequent hurricane blew them all the way back to Aeolia. And because this book is so long, I'll have to be splitting this into 2 parts, so tune in next time to find out if any of Odysseus' opportunities ever go as planned, in the next episode of The Odyssey.